Hey, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Every Friday, we welcome outsider and transgressive question mark writers to come and share their work with us. So we actually got a pretty full docket tonight, so we're just going to jump right the fuck into this thing. So first up tonight is Jesse, and Jesse is going to be sharing a book review, I believe, a review of
Yeah, I was going to read two poems and then a book review, but I decided to just read the book review to make it go a little faster. Um, a few months ago or a little while ago, I was talking about Bruce Wagner's new novel, The Marvel Universe Origin Stories, and I finished reading it finally a little while ago. So I wrote a book review that's on Goodreads, and I thought I would read that tonight. So let me just get to it.
Sure thing. And I put the link in the chat if anyone's wondering.
Okay, I gave it 5 stars. It's called Zero Hoper. That's the name of the review. If you get a thrill watching bad things happen to people and then seeing how the bad things deepen, giving way to further bad things, then a surprise hole in the basement is broken through, and you see characters fall into even worse fortunes that you didn't even think about, and you can't look away from what's there. The Marvel Universe origin stories and many other Bruce Wagner novels are for you. The tale of how this un-PC novel came to be published on Wagner's website, brucewagner.la, and put into the public domain has been recounted elsewhere on the web, including on his Wikipedia site, in YouTube interviews, and podcasts such as the Unspeakable podcast, that will not be rehashed here. The novel is a sort of tripartite anthology of linked stories regarding people both rich and poor in LA, all dealing with the triple mammon, or is it Moloch, of celebrity, wealth, and drugs in our time. Wagner is well known for tackling these subjects, but what he does with each novel is somehow make it fresh with further Dickensian complications and, crucially, up to the millisecond cultural reference points. In this case, we are dwelling in the current ferocious cultural backwash of a country that is drunk deep from the blockbuster movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe alluded to in the title. The first section recounts a love story between Fat Joan Gamma, an obese inheritrix of a fortune after her family is wiped out by a murderer, and Allie Nell, a mega celebrity actress who has been diagnosed with ALS. Allie spends time avoiding contemplating her eventual fate as a locked-in husk by sedulously tending to her Instagram account, which we are treated to generous chunks of with sick, funny hashtags like all's now that ends now, or hashtag all's now that ends now, and hashtag why not take alls of me. Celebrity cameos, which Wagner often deploys in his novels, multiply like a colony of hornets as the two women find their way through their lover's paradise in LA, which, as you might guess if you know Wagner's prior fiction, is not a case of all's well that ends well. The second section details a set of con artists trying to rip off an auto magnate from Cleveland using sex and a cleverly deployed Elon Musk lookalike. The point woman of the con is a mother to a disturbed young girl unable to separate reality from fantasy, who thinks she is living in the MCU and that her father behind bars is Wolverine. This section was pitch black Hollywood crime fiction peppered with outrageous, laugh out loud comedy while managing to also be heartbreaking and punishingly sad. The third and final section is about Gary Gabe Vicker, a famous and successful showrunner of the Chuck Lorre ilk, who finds himself in the path of the Me Too juggernaut as he is accused of sexual harassment. His fate is entwined with that of Adele Cobain, a raunchy stand-up comedian trying to make it big. Adele jokes that, I named myself that because after I lose a bunch of weight, I can do what I've wanted to since I was a kid, blow my brains out. The contortions of celebrities trapped in the crosshairs of cancel culture artillery makes for some of the most trenchant and poisonous reading in the novel. The hidden linkages between Gary and Adele and her family are revealed in awful ways. Coincidental interconnections between individuals a la Charles Dickens abound in the sprawling LA of Wagner's dark imagination. And for me, these linkages only occasionally strain credulity to the detriment of the novel. Somewhere there exists a chart showing the exact distance between Bret Easton Ellis and Bruce Wagner. The distance is not especially far, but crosses some crucial gradient. Wagner is more ornate, maximalist, and informed by the 19th century than Ellis is. Wagner gets under my skin more than Ellis does. I'm not bothered by Ellis's violence and affectless anomie. Ellis wrote about another planet of stupendous wealth and fame and another species of human. Wagner is writing about the same people, same area code, but Wagner's bad vibes hit closer to home, perhaps because the inner lives of his characters, what they share with a hapless reader who will never be in this stratosphere of fame, are encoded in a way that Ellis has, at least so far, has never been capable of. One wealthy real estate man and philanthropist privately scorns the naive efforts of those in his tax bracket to raise money fighting diseases like ALS, which are zero hopers, and hope is hard to find in a Bruce Wagner creation. Much is made in press about Wagner that he's trying to describe both the despair of current days in America and specifically Hollywood, and the transcendence hiding between the blocks of despair, like persistent vegetable life seeking the light. Wagner often invokes Buddhist teachings which stress impermanence and difficult extractions from the world of material being and suffering. Death, disease, greed, and perversion are ever present, but somewhere there is meaning for the reader who is graciously given a panoramic view over all the wreckage and vanity. It might be found, oddly and obliquely, in the laughter and lapidary linguistic playfulness that Wagner injects into the stories. But like all things, the laughter and play are as temporary as the mandala.
I really want to read this book.
It's a great book.
You definitely you sold it to me 100%. And you have a real knack. I've read a couple of your other reviews, and you have
No, I didn't get drunk. I'm halfway.
1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I've read a few of your other reviews, Jesse, and you have a real knack for getting under the surface of a work. And you definitely do that here. Like, you get really deep into the themes that Wagner is exploring, and in a really lucid and well-reasoned way, I think. And I 100% need to pick this up. And it's public domain too, right?
Right. So, I mean, theoretically, as I said once before, you could go to his website and do some kind of copy and paste and print out the book. The weird thing about this copy that I have is there's no page numbers because they took it right off of his document and just printed it. So I couldn't tell you, but it's a pretty thick book.
Sure.
But there might be ways to read it without paying for it.
Oh, I'm sure if you can just pull it from the website,
read it on, if you can read it on a screen, you could just read it off the website.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe just download it to my Kindle or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it sounds very much of the moment, but it doesn't sound like one of those books that are trying to just sort of superficially capitalize on the moment, if that makes any sense. At least the way you're describing it, it sounds like he really actually finds some insight into quote unquote quote cancel culture and the Marvel phenomenon. And
the part at the end about the guy being accused of sexual harassment is one of the better parts of the book. It's pretty chilling because it really gets in. Well, I can't explain it. You have to read it, but it gets pretty in depth into it, and he definitely has a kind of point of view that is that would get him in trouble and get him canceled himself.
That would lead to him having to release his novel into the public domain, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, over his career, and I'll stop talking in a second.
Oh, yeah,
he's kind of run afoul of people, and he definitely has a kind of beef with the cancel culture of our times, you know. But that's it. Thank you for listening.
Didn't you say that the reason
What's that?
didn't you say he got in trouble because the character's name was Fat Joan and that was why he got
Right.
in trouble? Or
That was the first thing that the publisher said, is you can't have a character call themselves fat. And he had been aware that maybe some people at the publishing house had given it to so-called sensitivity readers who said, you know, you can't, this is really objectionable. And he said he severed ties with the publisher and then said, well, I need to get this book out in a hurry or else it's going to be too dated. So, and I just don't want to deal with publishers. So he just totally put it out himself on his website. It's really interesting.
I can definitely, yeah, sorry. Oh, I thought somebody was saying something. Oh, Blick is saying something, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I have two novelist friends, and it's only fairly recently I even heard what a sensitivity reader is, and they both hired them. I thought it was the most ridiculous fucking thing. I couldn't believe it. I thought the first one was just bullshitting me, you know, and then the second one was telling me that they hire it. Who's sensitive? Is anybody here on this group sensitive enough to be a sensitivity reader?
Well, I think I can see the point of them, but you know, in this case, it was too much.
You know, if I ever publish anything, I'm going to insist that Rudy serve as my sensitivity. And I would like to
Unfortunately,
see
I can't
them
read,
reject Rudy as my sensitivity. But anyway, thank you so much, Jesse. As usual, that kicked ass. And Forrest is up next.
Hey guys, I was just saying that I can't read is my go-to joke with spring.
Oh, Forrest, I'm sorry, I can't really hear you.
Can you hear me? Oh god.
Not very clearly.
Yeah, okay, how's that? Too loud.
The opposite problem right now.
Okay, I'm gonna do the level check. I'm sorry about this. I'm 5 minutes, so you just go up or down and tell me.
You need to go down a little bit.
Okay, one, 2, 3, check.
Up.
One. Oh,
Perfect.
so sensitive.
3 was good, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Right
Well,
here is perfect.
Yeah.
Sorry about
That's
that,
such a-
Forrest.
No, it's my fault. I've been breaking my software on purpose to procrastinate. So I'm just gonna continue on. I'm gonna continue on and try to entertain you guys with this novel writing, and we'll see how far we can go before it gets boring. You know, it's very late here, so I'm going to be quiet otherwise, but I'm having a good time. So here I am, is Glenn, the grief counselor, in his basement, and he is writing to his family of a problem, where his son was prostituting himself as a woman with a famous, well-known politician, partially based on the true story. So there is Glenn writing in the basement. And he goes, he's writing to Jules, who is his son's John. Your threats have brought a great deal of stress into our lives, especially that of my poor wife. She was already at wit's end about our son's struggles before she ever learned about your dalliances with Valerie. When my son became ill and we found Valerie's email account, including the particularly threatening email from your attorney, and discovered that my son, the so-called Valerie, what had truly been up to since dropping out of college, my wife broke down into fits of hysteria, sobbing and screaming becoming absolutely petrified that you would do more than just financially ruin us, but that furthermore, you proposed a threat to not only my son, but also my wife and anyone else who might be residing in our home. It was at this point that my wife hastily packed up her hatchback and began driving, as she said, to the Grand Canyon. I, in fact, have no idea where my wife is as I write this. She did not bring a cell phone, or if she did, she didn't leave me the number, and she has not contacted me since she left. And so I have been put in this unfortunate position of doing whatever I can in the short amount of time before my son is nursed back to health by the psychiatrist at the hospital. And I, as I do indeed hope, my wife returns. My wife is so dearly attached to my son, too much so, in my opinion. She had such a difficult pregnancy with him, and I myself had, due to numerous complications during the third trimester, feared very much during the weeks leading up to his birth that he would be intellectually disabled. Alas, his handicap was not a mental one, and he was born much like his father, with a high level of intelligence, excelling in the sciences as well as the language arts. He could very well have made an excellent mental health professional himself, if not for the unfortunate situation he is in now. No, my son was eventually handicapped in another way, emotionally. Quite simply, by an overbearing mother, left unable to love, and, as if it needs to be said, never learning to fuck a woman properly. It seems to me that my son's neutered ability to make love to a woman is eventually what led him to become one. I do realize that this analysis may come off as somehow against transgenderism, or that I perhaps am underestimating the inherent power in my son's mutation. But I am, after all, a trained psychotherapist, and I did read a fair deal of psychoanalytic case studies during my wild days as a young man. From my learned perspective, my son's sexual persona that has developed over the past few years is a product of extreme narcissistic tendencies bestowed upon him by an overbearing mother. It would be commonly accepted in my field that my son's most threatening symptoms, his drug addiction, his self-mutilation, his hatred of his own homosexual tendencies, and so on, could be evened out with a talking cure, and he could go on living according to his own standards, and with a bit of work, even as a transgender woman, in whatever way society might accept my son as her in the decades to come. However, my son's neuroses have been tightly knotted together with an IV crystal meth addiction, coupled with a prostitution practice, leading to long periods of psychosis that have included all-encompassing visual hallucinations, gender dysphoria, delusions of grandeur, followed by a bout with melancholia that left him catatonic and unable to speak. Being that, at this point, talk therapy has become useless. And so I have laid my faith with the psychiatrists at the hospital and now believe that once my son is properly medicated and guided down off his high horse, he will be able to find a way in this world that better suits him, and he will stop inflicting so much misery upon himself and everyone around him. Being that as it may, and only time will tell if my son will return to health, and of course I will love him no matter what the outcome, your relationship with Valerie Jules will be ruined by what follows. And that's it.
I love this. I love everything about the way this piece is framed and presented. I love the idea of the quasi autobiography told from your father's perspective, and it's so vicious, it's so nasty to have a character who's like your father, like psychoanalyzing you in such a just unbelievably like fucking cruel way. And it's so funny. It's so heartless and it's so funny. And I love it.
So,
And I hope
Yeah,
you keep
I
bringing
think-
more.
okay, yeah, I will. I think it'll get funnier. I'm getting more into the character. I'm like doing face blending, apps of like all of the grief counselors on Psychology Today, and like,
Oh man.
Oh my God. I remember
Re-
browsing Psychology Today last year when I was looking for a therapist.
yeah.
And a lot of those motherfuckers look the same.
Those pictures are kind of frightening.
They
They're
are.
kind of, yeah, like almost everyone, you're like, okay, there's something going on with this person that like I wouldn't want to get into. So, yeah.
You're sitting there and all their profiles are written the same. So you're
Yeah.
looking at their picture, trying to perform some kind of like fucking like primitive craniometry shit where you're like looking at them and you're like, does this guy have the right face to be my therapist or whatever? And it's very disheartening.
Yeah. My friend, who is a therapist and who might be here, told me that someone had copied and pasted her bio. So yeah, there's definitely some similarities between the bios and
That's fucking awesome. Yeah, it was a very demoralizing experience. But yeah, definitely I want to hear more of this. I love the perspective that this is written in. So hopefully if you can stay up till fucking 4 a.m. or whatever god ungodly hour it is there.
Dude, I love this. This is awesome for me. So
That story is amazing, and I like the way it's written in like this epistolary, like letters, like or emails or whatever between the people. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it was it's probably Chris Krause who's like wrote about epistolary novels as being the origin of the novel. They're like all moral tales,
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny to play off that. But,
Sweet.
yeah,
no, it's
well,
awesome.
Yeah, well, there are letters with this guy. There are emails with this guy too. So I guess we'll just see if they sound real or not when I read them. But it's coming.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Forrest.
Mhm.
Blick is up next. And I think you have 2 pieces for us, Blick. I'm going to put the links to both of them in the chat here. I think I got both of them.
And I actually a third, they're all short.
Sure.
A third poem that I just wrote a couple days ago because of the shit's going on at the Supreme Court. All right, so this first piece is actually I was talking to Gabe. Gabe's always talking about and his books are all set in the desert, and I had one experience in the desert that was horrific, but that was in Morocco, and he's telling me it's the high desert and it's different. And then today, this week, Gabe posted this beautiful, like this beautiful red tree in there. So it blew my mind more that it's a desert. So this is my desert experience in a way. It's called Sand Drifts. And it's a prose poem. There's no punctuation in it. So one of the reasons why I like coming on here is I hate reading. So this is a real challenge. So forgive me, there'll probably a lot of fuck ups in it. All right, Sand Drifts. I step off the flamingo-colored bus and walk into the Middle Ages with mountains hovering in the background while lots of vapors hit, depending on which way you turn. Charcoal smoke, dry dung, piss, nothing remotely romantic as the universe you've been living in has been flicked and brought you back to time of camels and donkey, into the back of beyond, sans electricity, but rosy glow kerosene lanterns show off local vendors' fruit and brown one-story buildings down the dried mud thoroughfare, where small piles of orange are arranged like pyramids of precious gems, and lanterns put out thin beams of shaky light. So walking down the street into darkness, You hear a clip-clopping echo and see a flickering pinprick light and jump out of the way of a donkey cart headed right at you, with the driver sitting on top, smoking keef next to a kerosene lamp, unable to see you in the pitch black air, though you might smell donkey and driver if the dung-laced breeze blows up your nose, as my body quivers with newfound knowledge of time. So I pour sand from one hand to the other in order to anchor me to the earth and settle it into a leathery haunch and breathe in the remnants of the old ways through worn slats of the oldest door in the world, hanging in entrance of a mud compound where bakers hook their flat dough pieces the size of small pillows with a black rod onto the roof of a beehive-shaped oven with a flick of their wrists, bakers' limbs having an intelligence of their own, needing no concentration after thousands of years of repetition, while turban-wrapped men pass as if in parade out of the Bible, faces not quite Asian, not quite European, dark beards, hollow cheeks, gazing into space until throwing out pieces of conversation into the air, stepping past dry creek beds with cratered walls of sand on either side of you, the chaos of the crust of the earth as if some mad god of sculpture traveled along their rims in ecstatic abandon, jubilating in the peculiar sense of sand surrounding you in a protective snake-shaped womb, as you listen to the high willing voices from the tendrils of the wind, a song slithering among dunes carved from alleys of sand, melody, and lyric, complete with a woman's mating ritual of belly jiggling, pelvic thrusts vibrate and stretched in filthy angelic breathing in the mud, unleashing a gale of erotic energy as drums gather her through different symphonies of movement, causing the skin of the soldier of peace to split like a serpent's egg to reveal the tinkle of a goat's bell. That's a desert. The second poem that was published a couple weeks ago, I guess, it's called An Atheist Argument. And I went to a friend of mine who's only 41, he died, and his 11-year-old son, I sort of hung out with him at the funeral, and the kid was really angry, and he was really was angry with his relatives that he never saw, you know. So I actually wrote it to him. I sent it to him, and then I decided to get it published. All right, this is Atheist Argument. Choirs singing, strangers weeping, eyes glued to the casket, potbelly giant shouting praises, eyes the collection basket. God is love, God is life, man is not dead. Fatherless Sunday schoolers screams out as his Christianity is being bled, gushes through the new gray suit, pouring over nomadic relations, kneeling in pews 3 deep up front, cursing acceptance of the invitation to comfort the grieved and radiate some strength till the box is firmly planted. Then with tearful goodbyes and bored relieved sighs, they vanish with their God to Scranton. All right, and there's one more short one. This was just based on, you know, we have when one rapist appoints another rapist to the highest court in the country, you know, and it just is blowing my mind. It's just blowing my mind that the government's going to start controlling bodies, you know. So this is it's called Twilight Cocktail. By 10:30, I knew right there in the front seat before I drove myself home, after we slept together for the first time, that very first day we met. 6 weeks later, we hadn't spent a moment apart. And when rhyme and luck did not work, I did not want to force the issue. Should we marry? Do you want to? If you do you? I do, but not because I have to. And I did, but not because I had to. Abortion is no bon voyage party, despite the Twilight Cocktail, yet grateful I was for my freedom of choice. We did not need rhythm this time, right time, my time, our time. Together still we watch, my belly growing and glowing, ever grateful for my freedom of choice. All right, that's it. Thanks.
All three were fantastic. And like, you really showed off like your range tonight, right? Like, this was a tightrope act because you went from one like stream of consciousness.
Did you say my age? You said I showed off my age?
I said your range, not your age.
Oh.
Your range tonight.
Oh, I like the age is okay. That's okay. That's okay too.
No, because you went from like a prose poem, right? A stream of consciousness prose poem to a like more traditionally structured poem to a political piece. And that it's hard to nail that many different notes, right? And all of them were fucking fantastic. But I want to talk about the second poem because that last stanza is fucking genius. That turn that they vanish with their god to Scranton, like my fucking blew my mind. Like that is like Robert Frost caliber shit, where like you think you get like the poem has a very direct rhythm and you think it's very clear, and then something happens, right? That totally like takes the air out of everything before. And the To Scranton there accomplishes so much with just those two words. Like it just completely deflates the entire like the spirituality of everything that came before, right? And the profundity of everything that comes before in such a,
Yeah.
I don't know, such a fucking elegant way.
Jimmy liked it. I wrote it for Jimmy. He liked it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those people were from Scranton. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
I really liked the first one. That I wrote it on the Twitter post, but it has imagery that you can literally smell. I love it. The first poem, the prose poem you read, that was so good.
Yeah, it definitely smells. I'll agree to that. Yeah.
No, Rudy's right though. The atmosphere is so rich in that piece, and the way that piece. One thing I will stop, but one thing I really like about that piece is it starts very anchored in, like, as Rudy says, like the smells, but like in the material reality, right? But by the end of the piece, it's almost fucking like hallucinogenic. You're almost having like a psychedelic experience there with the serpent wound, the serpent's egg, and the goat's bell, and like all these different things that you're seeing, right?
That's exactly what the Moroccan desert was like. I went in there, didn't know what the fuck was going on, and I was there for weeks. And the longer I stayed there, the more surreal it got, and the more sense it made. You know. So
right.
It ain't Gabe's desert. Okay, that's for sure. I love that red tree that Gabe put up. Yeah.
No, that was fantastic, Blick. Fucking awesome as usual. Sorry, I lost my spot on the list of readers. Oh, Ryan's up next.
Hey, what's up?
I'll put the link in the chat. And
so Ryan, I was gonna tweet you out, but what is your handle on Twitter? I forget. I know
I'll spell it.
Okay, yeah, because I just had trouble spelling.
I think that's it. I forgot the spelling too.
Gotcha. Okay, it should grab it here. Yep, got it.
And I think I got the right link in the chat there, so we're ready whenever you are.
Thank you. Okay, so this is from something. It's like a novel that's being serialized in Hollow House. This is the first like chapter of it. It's gonna be like whatever it ends up as, but this is the first chapter of it, and I'm gonna read the first 5 parts of the chapter, so it shouldn't take that long. Okay, so I'm gonna start. Psych Halo. Morgan wakes up under his canopy. It looks a little ragged, shadows on the leaf curls. The sun has moved. It's hard for him to keep track. He's lost access to SunNet, and it was sheer luck that the sun's been nice to him for so long. It doesn't need to be. Deep down, he doesn't really believe the rumors that the elites control the sun. It's sinister enough that they control the news of its movements. Some part of him that sees him as parasites thinks of it as weaponized astrology. His psych oracle tells him that's paranoia, but she looks like she's doing better than him, so she'd be in on it too. His lines run so easily to think of it all. He has to think of her as helpful just to stay sane. He wonders if she'd give up some info if asked. That should fit in with neutral Lotus philosophy. Who really cares if he has more info than he technically should? He needs to get it together for his flora. He starts moving to where the veins run. Last night he fell asleep in one of the outer layers of his growth that runs fast into the whole forest, where sometimes he sees nice things, like stars. He fell asleep, looking at the stars, as they danced through the holograph mists of the canopy. Smelled the mutate orchids that gave the garden city its name. They smell tangy, fluffy like clouds. The motes dance through him, teleporting past his nose. The skin of his veins, but more his psyche than his body. He always shakes this off after a while, thinking it feels too weird. Then he tries to know what to do. He hasn't seen his psych oracle in too long, so he's fuzzy. Static, like electricity, his psych halo. He doesn't feel it sometimes. Sometimes he wakes up, wearing it somewhere else, somewhere that looks unfun. He's learned how to shut it down by thinking at it. Right now it feels nice, like honey, the ancient kind, held by the thick roots of the world. A leaf curls near him. It lands over his head, covering fist. It looks ragged, torn in gouges. Something out there is hurting it. Maybe it's the sun, he thinks. It could be the sun all along and we never know. Maybe SunNet tells you where it isn't. Maybe it's all hallucination somehow. Either way, he needs to focus on this. The nutrients won't flow into his tender by himself. He needs to draw them near somehow. Drawings, where it all folds in on him. The whole skein of everything collapsing between thought spaces. That's when he sees the waver in space. The alt. The shimmer is a shape. He doesn't see it in sight, his psyche, or what controls it, not holding it long enough. What he remembers is the shape behind things that flits through the spaces of the hues and pheromones. Shows itself to be loved, vanishes again, something beckoning that doesn't need to know how. He thinks he sees a tail, but it could be a tendril, a shadow slipping through leaves, undersides, blurring past clover. Whatever it is, he wants it as it slips behind the faintness of the things he only sees through the gossamer lids of his skyne eyes. Past the mush. The mush is just glass, something the flora has to make it through. And he thinks he loses too much to know it, just the trying of it. The alt is nothing, and it always feels good to think of. The shimmer flickers to outside of his periphery, and his eyes want to swivel to the bursts there, but instead he holds them on where he last saw it static. It's just space, and nothing matters of it now. This is still his flora, still darkened, but still vivid. Neonic orchid pinks, faded teals, the white of ghosts in the snow. Still him, right here, even with the rot. He grasps for it anyway, waiting for his hand to pass through it. Just a memory now of something that might never have been there. His arms are slender, hands thin-wristed, veins coiling over bone under his skin. He feels the spaces between the flora. No, not just the flora. Or it can mutate itself, the whole seminal seed scattered, winged and carried through until the whole city was a forest, until the whole forest was just an idea. Never sure if its founding was a story, or if it was a flow. He never saw it grow. Maybe it began as branches, curling out of and into earth, a bracken tangle like veins. Maybe it came through the air, pheromones first, drawing life near, fragrance and lust. He can't remember his birth moment. He can only remember growing, slow like flora, growing and not really knowing it until his tender weakened, and it was time for him to take care of it. He wishes he had seed sisters, just for the knowing of what it was like for them. As a boy, he just wants to press in, lose himself in the verdants, and maybe sleep forever. As he watches, frost creeps over his arm, scaling in tiny wraith-like diamonds and hardening just past the bone of his elbow. Haptic collapse. The first thing he knows is pain. It's not the frost over his skin, though that hurts as he moves it, digs in and cuts. It's something deeper. The frost is a taint he knows from the start, and it works how taints work. It seeps in, finds the spaces, cuts them up. Everything blackens in death. Everything becomes the cut up sky, the blackness through. When the blackness makes it through the verdants, it's only a chill, nothing to fret over if he's sweater wrapped. Sorry about my cat. This is different. This has found his blood, thickening and warping it. The pain blurs together in his sight. The blur is a haze of want and need unfulfilled, where they bend like hues and smells and feeling. He knows he can't understand it. There's 1,000 angles and they all cut, daggers carving paths to find the root of them. That root is bone fear, and it makes him afraid because if those are the roots of his tender, then it's all over. The haptics will all collapse into each other, touch by touch, until the fear is laced through the spine, the vibrations and pheromones, and everything that's ever existed will be afraid. He turns, moves back the way he came, nothing different except his arm is heavier, and his heart, if he has one, if there's anything real that pulses at the core of him. Something that shouldn't be measured. Something that shouldn't be measured is thought. His heart is heavier too. The black hole of the sun. He needs a boost to draw it out. He needs life, probably. At least one, maybe one far away from here. Undergrowth is hellish if it sneaks on you. It sneaks crimson, but sometimes it's in the darkening of the leaves, sometimes in the paling of them. Sometimes he thinks it's the movements he's not making. A frequency wire cross clings to the underleaves that he never sees. Spores everywhere. A death cycle has been warping everything in places he never notices. Something that he's floated over, not knowing the hidden wrongness. Everything that wants to vanish when you look at it, not give your percepts a way to sense it together. Not caring. Not seeing vanishment because it doesn't need you to see. Who can be sure of sight? When it all blurs, the pheromones, the thought pulses through static and chemistry, and everything blends if you get too scared. Who can be sure of anything except the haze it becomes when you think about it? Think with strength or wisdom, and all you'll know is you're weak and never wise enough. When Morgan feels like this, he wishes he could lie on the grass and never wake. Maybe no one would even bother him. It hurts to think of his tender, though. It doesn't deserve to go ragged, even if it could all be a haze. Blur and barrier, but looks permeable, and what is always shut. Behind the doors always shut hides the black hole of the sun. You only see it if you look. It's the shadow behind the veil you see sometimes, darkening the canopy for reasons you never know. You can never know it. The fires it burns it keeps hidden, far from you, behind shadows you can't see, and brush too thick to pass. And I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Ryan, I know I say this every fucking time, but every fucking time your world building blows me away. I have no, like, world building is something that I really struggle with when I try to do like speculative pieces, right? And you absolutely fucking nail it. You have this incredible grasp of atmosphere and how to just create these really intricate worlds that it like permeates the writing, right? It's not like, oh, here's a chunk of world building like some like amateurish writers do, but it's like it permeates the entire fucking thing. And the way you use color, it's always so sharp and so rich and so fucking bold. I don't know, I fucking dig it. I dig it so much.
Thank you. Thank you a lot. That's cool stuff to hear. I wanted to just shout out the other writers in the magazine because
Sure, yeah.
they're also
Absolutely.
good. So yeah, maybe read it if you like sci-fi and stuff. That's it. That's
Yeah,
all I have to say.
definitely. And the
Thank you.
magazine is Andata Express.
It's Hollow House, published
Okay.
by Andata Express.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. I took a look around their website. It looks like some really awesome stuff on there. But yeah, like that has like real Shane Carruth vibes and shit, like with like the imagery and some of the stuff, like fucking like Primer or Upstream Color.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Those are
that
like my favorite movies.
yeah, that
So
definitely
thank
has
you.
those vibes. But yeah, no, it's really, really great stuff.
Oh yeah, I fucking love Upstream Color. That's fucking mind-blowing film. But thank you so much for sharing, Ryan. Derek is up next. the link in the chat. Is Derek?
Yeah, I'm here. I will need to do a mic check like Forrest did.
You actually sound really fucking clear. You sound perfect.
All right. Man, tonight's been really good. Let's.
Hey,
thank
Derek,
you.
what, I'm not gonna tweet out the link to this, but what is your Twitter?
Mainly.
Okay, it's mainly okay. I thought it was Derek Main Lives. My bad.
No, my 10-year-old son asked me the other day about Twitter.
Oh,
So
boy.
that's why your name vanished from your account. I was wondering why you suddenly became.
I was
what
like,
is
I've
it,
never heard of it.
Ellipsis or something.
I was like, I've never heard of it, so I can't answer any of your questions.
Good policy, honestly.
All right, for so many reasons. All right, let's fix that. All right, so this is called A Happy Normal Life. No, thanks again. Everything's been awesome. I dropped my camera because I'm an idiot. All right. Come on. A Happy Normal Life. My barber's daughter is having a rough time in Pittsburgh. There's a clearance sale over at Batteries and Bulbs. The signs are everywhere. My mother's surgery went well. The many strokes have subsided. 100% blockage on the left side. Nothing they can do. The right side is enough, Dr. Charles says. Dr. Charles says she can live a happy, normal life with just the right side. I'm relieved she didn't die. I don't know how I could have written her obituary. I've been blocked for months. Dr. Charles said she can live a happy, normal life now. I don't know what he did when he had her filleted open on the operating table, that now she can live a happy, normal life. It doesn't seem possible. My barber, he gave me a pompadour. I don't know why. I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for any of this. I was in my mother's belly, cradled with love by the smoke from her nonstop Salem Light Menthol 100s. Then I was outside my mother's belly, and it was summer or fall, and the cousins are running in the dandelion fields by the curing barn, and the uncles are shooting apples. There must have been some mistake. There almost always is. Then it was later, some other time, I guess, and my kids are screaming over each other about a scholastic book fair or field trip or a field day maybe, and I have to stand there and take it with a pompadour. The scar on my mother's neck is so disgusting. It's not even a scar. It's her insides mingling with fresh air. She won't wear a scarf. Sometimes it pusses. Sometimes it bleeds. It grows bigger and nastier in my imagination, which is the only place it lives most of the time because I can't stomach the sight long enough to look at her. Why is it taking so long to heal? My dad asked. That's a great question, I say. At least she's not dead, he thinks. There's no way I could have written her obituary, I say. I've been blocked for months. I'm going to give you a hard part on the left, he says. All I hear is hard part on the left, 100% blockage, nothing we can do. I didn't know this meant I would end up with a pompadour. I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for any of this. My barber's daughter is having a rough time in Pittsburgh. The hard parts are everywhere. She's always had emotional problems. It started when she was young. Do you have a daughter? He asked. I do. She's 7. She'll be 8 in February. She has a shark tooth, left leg. This is the hard part. 100% blockage. Nothing we can do. His daughter sells her artwork. A lot of it is hung up on the wall of her father's barber shop. There's a terribly ugly collage-like rendition of the cover of Thriller by Michael Jackson, and a terrible, ugly collage-like rendition of the cover of In the Airplane Over the Sea by Neutral Milk Hotel, and a terribly ugly collage-like rendition of the cover of Kick by NXS. How much is that one, I ask? Which one? It doesn't matter. They are already sold. His daughter sells her artwork. He buys all of it and hangs it up on the wall of his barber shop. She only calls to talk to her mother. She doesn't tell me much, he says. She has emotional problems. She always has. Probably she'll move back home, he thinks. You just have to be there for him. That's all you can do, he says. The supply chain is a disaster. There's a paper shortage. There's a clearance sale over at Batteries and Bulbs. The signs are everywhere. My barber's daughter has emotional problems. Her roommate gave her a month to pack up her stuff and get the hell out. Something awful happened. Where have all the reliable truck drivers gone? There are kinks in the supply chain everywhere. It's been blocked for months. Am I going to have to go down the docks and sort this mess out myself? Help is wanted. The signs are everywhere. The price of everything is going up. Pound of flesh, sharks in the water smell blood. Pittsburgh. What did any of us expect? Buried in all that steel. She's an artist, he insists. Pittsburgh is home to a vibrant art scene. Vibrant. It varies. There are variants. Buried in all that still. I can see the shore. We're having trouble getting the things we need from here to there. Kinks in the supply chain. Don't kink shame the supply chain. Help wanted. $15 an hour. No one can get any paper. I can't believe I'm telling you this, he says. Who would you even tell, though? Right, I mumble. It's not like I'm getting this all down, I joke. How could you, he asked. I've been blocked for months. I couldn't even write my mother's obituary, I confess. When did your mother pass, he asked. She didn't. I even tried to kill her on a rooftop in Crown Heights, and the crowd goes wild. That's good she's not dead yet, he says. It would have been a real tragedy, I think. Where do you even put an obituary these days? The paper doesn't come anymore. There's a paper shortage. On the drive home, I listened to terrible Midwest emo from my childhood. Everywhere I look, there are snags in the supply chain. There's a clearance sale over Batteries and Bulb. The signs are everywhere. This time next year, I'll be a famous novelist. If they can at least figure out the damn paper supply. There's a paper shortage. It's been blocked for months. I can't believe I have a pompadour. I can't even hide how much of an asshole I am anymore. I'm furious at my barber. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this. I can't say anything. I'm stuck like this. We're both stuck like this. I've been blocked for months, and his daughter is having a rough time in Pittsburgh.
Sorry, I had to check the document. That's why I didn't drop in. Usually I'm following along with the document, but I was I was doing that through the first third of this. And then I was like, no, I have to stop looking at the document. I have to look at fucking Derek, because holy fucking shit, man. Holy fucking shit. That fucking holy
Thanks,
fuck.
man. Yeah. The document is different. The document is different than what I read, that, because there's another section
I saw that.
that I can't read. I can't read yet, maybe like in 10 or 15 years or whatever. But thank you so much. That was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Did you try? I saw you try, and I noticed.
I didn't anticipate not reading it. I did think I would just read it straight through. And like, I never get nervous anymore. I don't feel like, but like I did for whatever reason. So I just like skipped that because I was like, all right, I don't want to do that right now.
No, I can understand, but no, holy shit, man. Your pieces generally have a kind of like thematic complexity to them in the way that they kind of weave in and out of themes and like motifs and there are a lot of repeated phrases and stuff. That's fairly typical of your work, but the way you do it here is tremendous, because every time you repeat shit, it accumulates more meaning and it's pointing at something different, right? Like the blockage goes for, oh my God, the movement of that, like what the single word blockage is doing in this piece over and over and over again, and how it goes from like this little thing like in your mom's brain to becoming the entirety of Western civilization is a work of fucking genius. And it's like, I don't know, it's fucking like, people talk about autofiction, right? And they talk about autofiction as if it's like a person, like as if it's strictly like rip off Bukowski shit. Like somebody's going to talk about who they banged, what drugs they did or whatever. But this is fucking what, like, I think autofiction, like can do in a remarkable fucking way, which is taking like the nuances of the actual lived nuances of individual lives and finding the connection to the larger picture, right? Like the larger like social picture, or the larger religious picture, or the larger picture of human fucking existence, right? And having none of it be a lie and all of it be a lie, right? And it's incredible, Derek. You fucking you can tell that.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
I think autofiction has a important role now in some ways, even more so, I think, brought on by like we use fiction to understand the world. We use literature to understand the world and each other. And
Right.
then there was this period of time where we were all basically home. The only way we saw and interacted with each other was our families. So things did like kind of internalize, and connecting that to that external word is awesome. Anyway, I'm talking way too much. Thank you so much.
No, I was talking way too much, Derek. Thank you. Fucking amazing. Thank you. Next in line is Dan. I'll put the link.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
And I'm putting the piece in the. So you're going to be reading a piece you said was published a little while ago in Expat, right?
Yeah, about 2 years ago in Expat.
Cool.
Right. This is called Salinger's Cut Purse. The river water froze my feet up to my shins, barefoot on rocks carved and rounded by time. This is what men are supposed to be. My brother and I were sick of skipping stones across the water surface, smooth and flat as the glass display cases we look through with wonder at trading cards with prices we couldn't imagine being able to afford. Across the Chemainus River, a couple built Inukshuks. We watched them the same way a cat watches a mouse in the long grass from a tall fence post. After the couple left, we took turns launching stones to destroy the 36 painstakingly built statues. We laughed while we did it. It started as giggles, but slowly took on the staccato rhythm of a hyena's growl. That was a long time ago, but still I feel guilty for every beautiful thing I've destroyed in my life. I lived beneath the faraway tea kettle rumble of airplanes and bull rush semi-trailers, beneath crying ambulances and barking dogs. Even as an adult, life felt like pretend. The dope-minded, everything is going to be okay attitude I held in mind didn't help me when I was a marker-handed toddler pushing my fingers through the gaps of chain-link fences and into the jaws of feral German shepherds. For all the sun's glory, it didn't stop me from stepping into places I didn't belong. In this city, most big box retailers have shut down. There's a Dollarama on every corner between a gas station and a liquor store, though. It's the Dollarama sign that makes me anxious, I think. The bright yellow and green. It reminds me of golf. A golf course on a weekend has more predators milling about than a prison. At least a convict has the good sense not to smile when he's stealing from you. A psychiatrist appointment can end very poorly if the doctor wants it to. Once 4 stiff police with guns displayed holding handcuffs and a legal document from a doctor forced my last hospitalization on me. I never wanted to go back. I wasn't afraid. I just didn't like boredom. Boredom, as most of us timed out grown-ups know, is worse than anything else. It's even worse than pain. Like boredom, pain was intended to teach right from wrong, but all I learned was that it hurts a lot. The last institutionalization, I wondered, in the hospital bed, if the worn circumstances of my birth filled my father with such disgust that I was never meant to survive. Born premature and then delivered to a small glass chamber I almost died in, without anyone's consultation, but that's old news. There's a bigger chamber for the regular week, the benign week. And I saw the faces of relatives worn by strangers on the street. Everyone was acting. All the world the stage, heads and hands and feet scripted to do what they do. Waiting for public transit, I wondered what it would be like to watch the world end from someone else's perspective. The college girl in the blue jeans and white tank top and a forearm tattoo seemed to be one of the many destinies, and luckily she sat next to me at the bus stop. "What's your name?" I asked. "Miranda." She looked back to her phone, barely giving me a glance. "You in summer semester, summer school?" "Sure," she said. "Where are your books?" I asked. She put her headphones on and turned away without a word. I was done being a crazy at that point. I just wanted to be in love. A lover is someone like a lunatic, is like a person, like an ocean, pushed and pulled by something much bigger than themselves. Staring across the road, the gaps between moving vehicles allow for a sort of soft focus, a non-clinical dissociation. I always thought madness was an ocean I could sail over. There was land somewhere out there to collapse onto and finally rest, returning to the true self, me minus the thoughts and compulsions. The life I had before moving back to the West Coast flashed before my eyes almost constantly. It was so beautiful, yet I felt as though I was dying there. Montreal still called, far, far away, the ruined Coliseum of vice and art and beauty and everything interesting. Not much place for a shaman, though. The industries there have a vice grip on rejuvenation, calculators, tubes, wires, and syringes. Instead, my ancestors cut themselves to bloody steel for good luck. The worst I did was arrange stones in circles and demand absolution in front of a broken mirror, collect leaves and rocks I could identify as special. My ancestors thought stones had power and could transfer energy from the planes to the mortal. That makes a druid, that makes a witch. Inside every pebble were fragments of living things that died a long time ago. Before the birth of the universe, a different iteration died. The bus arrives, and I watch my shadow shift in the window again. The piles of snow on the sidewalks were like this off-white lumps of skin in my grandmother's hand as I squished them between my fingertips. I asked her why they didn't snap back into shape like my skin did. When you get old, it never goes back to the way it was, she said. There was never a time to be mournful for skin. Since 8, there was an expectation I would die young. It happens after the first time you're caught trying to kill yourself. You know it's not the last time. I made a noose with the wire of a controller at my dad's girlfriend's house and tied it to the top of the bunk bed. Beyond the broken blinds, the white dusted coffee tables, and the garbage bags leaking onto faded linoleum, there were reasons my family couldn't be called dysfunctional. 6 years before I was born, my mom decided to perform some stunts on a horse for her friend, who tried to convince her not to. She spooked the horse and went headfirst into a telephone pole. Her right leg broke in 3 places, and she spent several months in the hospital, most of it in a coma. You'd think that would be the highlight, but it's a footnote. It's harder than that. It runs deeper than that. Dirty snow along the roads, I followed the lines of muck in the gutter. Miranda was off my radar, and we were both glad of it. The first thing I recall about childhood was fear. I remember fear asking my father if I could turn on the television. He tended to explode into a rage and make his problems his children's problems. I still get flashbacks whenever I'm about to open my mouth in a quiet room, even in my own home. He hated being interrupted almost as much as I felt he hated me. Dirty snow marks the end of winter, or the beginning, it doesn't matter. Every glance from a woman in public was validation, and validation was a bowl with no bottom. I'm still waiting for my fill. Redemption didn't come either. What did I have to be redeemed for? My sins were petty, greed, sloth, lust. Still, there are a string of red paper hearts fastened to my solar plexus. The other end is tied to God knows where. All I know is there isn't much slack between the 2 points. The almost 2-dimensional organs never grazed the broken bottles and used condoms lying on the pavement. In my old hometown, people drink and fuck in the gutters underneath the dim reflections of hydroponic light. It's nothing really, nothing to worry about. Rose was someone beautiful I almost destroyed, and I still thought of her every day. In Montreal, I spilled through the doors and scraped my palms on the jagged sidewalks, vomiting out the sins of the evening. There it was, all laid out before me like so many pages. Kill the noise in your stupid skull. Just go. Down the steps again. Don't trip this time. Montreal was love that made you crazy. And I wanted to cry when I remembered it, but I couldn't let on with a public face. Fuck. The commercials play again on the ceiling of the bus. Where was I? The vomit, puke, gack, warm, acidic oatmeal. There I was, wild and lost, really. I couldn't remember the reason I was in that great city, just the lights and great bars, club, super sex, notwithstanding. It was our great literary city. Toronto is where the artists go to grow up and get real jobs. In Montreal, both had those wonder-eyed women who thought vagrancy was mysterious and sort of an expat literary culture, not unlike Paris between the wars. It's just my luck I was in love then. Good for me. Rose used to sweep my hair to one side of my forehead, but I thought it was too Hitlerish. I sat in the bathtub in my underwear. She cleaned up the bad haircut I gave myself. Make it look like you want to be seen in public with me, or else I can just wear a toque. Rose kept quiet whenever she was at work with some project. Her lips tightened against each other like she was angry. There's Broken and then there's Us, baby, I hummed. I don't even think it was a real song. I told her it was before her time. Regardless, there's history in that city. The ghosts living in the brick apartments of the McGill ghetto kept whispering their truths in a way it was hard to ignore. All the voices held together like the sound of the Chemainus River. Only a strong current could keep me moving. Both places, Montreal and Chemainus, I nearly drowned. I was on the way to the psychiatrist trying to be good and not cold turkey my medications. On a maintenance dose, it's easier to think clearly. Higher doses meant sluggishness of the body and spirit. In Montreal, I didn't make any friends. You'd figure someone might have wanted to talk to me, but it was harder than it seemed. I expected my weight to be a gravity well, drawing all nearby bodies into my orbit. My clothes got bigger the longer I sat in that IKEA chair smoking weed and drinking coffee. There's nothing wrong with a drug addict, said no one. Once I dropped out, the dog catchers heretofore referred to as psychiatrists were on my heels trying to inject me with structure, form, and purpose. My question is, what purpose can a well-read human have that doesn't account for entropy? What purpose could you conceive for someone as fucked up as me? I didn't promise anything to anyone. I made pacts, bonds, or covenants, but no promises. Through the bus window, a native couple walked through stopped traffic with a sign and a crumpled Tim Hortons cup between them. Maybe there were broken promises somewhere along the girder lines of industry through time. The foundations that are all buried 6 feet down on the sacred land of the murdered first people. In Montreal General, there was nothing forgotten as much as those quiet moments in the faraway wars. Patients said I'd leave with a giant bag of pills that made my eyes grow dollar signs. Some patients said I didn't need to take up a bed because I wasn't that sick. I lost my equilibrium somewhere along Avenue de Parc. Birds followed the tall, dark-haired woman with a large nose to cross the intersection and disappeared into a coffee shop. I remember a Kurdish girl staring at me. She wore an olive drab army jacket like the one I was wearing. She smiled, turned her head, and crossed the other way. Icicles formed above our patio by the time the leaves fell, and I found the perfect one, still pure green, barely any aphid holes, with the stem intact. I put it in my pocket and brought it home to show Rose. Her eyes narrowed and her forehead wrinkled like the tinfoil my grandmother saved in a drawer. Were you collecting leaves? You wouldn't understand. My mind is a tree on fire. So many branches of thought, so many burning leaves falling, I can't catch them all. There was a broken-hearted sound that fell out of her and shattered on the ground, like she knew I was falling away from her. I cut the cord binding us at the waist and then just floated there like a 2-day-old balloon, sometimes orbiting, sometimes spinning. But I always came back, always, always. Her parents divorced and were not good to her afterwards. That's why I think she feared abandonment. Her parents both remarried and she was shuffled back and forth between them with her suitcases. Rose spent most of her childhood in daycare. I didn't want to think about it too much at that point in Montreal. I spent a lot of time thinking about hanging myself from the balcony. Thinking about my lover's broken childhood reminded me of my own, and it felt fated to be together. A few days before she left for Christmas break, she played a song for me, Little Waltz by Bastille Bullet. On the line, Two Lost Little Birds. Fuck, I can't even think about that line without crying. It felt like we were both in a new place without anything binding us to a family. She had more to fear than me. She was in school, had a job, had friends. She could lose them all if I did something stupid like hang myself from the balcony. People disappear after suicides. People throw their hands up like enough is enough. She told me later she expected to one day come home to find me dead. I'm over it now, over everything sad in my life. I'm sure I'll have more sadness, more depression, and more defeat. That is inevitable. In the waiting room of the mental health center, there's the sound of people breathing through their nose that makes you want to jump up on your chair and scream. The psychiatrist came through the glass double doors and waved me in. I sat down in a well-padded chair and waited for him to fold his hands in his laps and cross one leg over the other. My mouth opened and the psychiatrist's eyes turned ecstatic. My father reserved his kindness for women he wanted to fuck. It took him a while to find a home for us. My brother and I slept on the floor of spare rooms that belonged to my father's friends. The adults did cocaine off a glass coffee table while we tried to sleep. Madness is one thing I've never been able to shed my addiction to. The memories, the feelings I get when I remember the way snow curled off the awning above the emergency room entrance at Montreal General Hospital are as beautiful and as out of reach as weak old dreams. In the hospital, they force a higher power on you through the beveled edge of a needle, and it's not what you'd expect for all the crusty old vet nurses and crucifixes around their necks. There's knowledge that your body and mind no longer belong to you. It's like being conscripted in that sense, but you aren't even given a gun on arrival. If you find yourself in a locked, padded room, you can't even shoot your way out. You are now in the service of keeping the study of psychiatry afloat. Good luck and Godspeed. I wanted to love the world, all of it, down to the atom, down to the meaningless pain, the sharp stone at the bottom of a shoe. All of it is necessary and nothing is out of place. At a quiet moment in the Montreal General cafeteria, I said, I want to get hit by a car. The walls echoed back, we all do. Walking the halls of the ward felt like riding my bike down a dark road. The clean linoleum could be water for all I care. It snowed for days. My room had a window. I was a pincushion with all these needles full of Haldol, clozapine, and Vega. The names of drugs came with a deceptively sweet sound of music. Haldol, clozapine, in Vega. I'll wait for the noises in the walls to stop and I'll call myself a liar. It might be war hawks doing it. They want to keep you up all night thinking there are Islamic fundamentalists in your ceiling, I say to the psychiatrist. I know I was not making my point clear, but my point was lost every time the first phoneme flew from the tip of my tongue. In Montreal, I felt the words. I didn't hear them because they boomed through my bones. A boy learns from his father how to disappear and when to rematerialize. My grandfather was a home child, a nice way of saying unwanted offspring turned slave and shipped here from Scotland. He spent most of his life as a traveling salesman. I remember the smell of rye on his breath and how dry his hands were. He rubbed his thumb and forefinger together to make the sound of a dying frog, but he couldn't fool me. A cloud of tobacco smoke preceded my father ringing the doorbell to my grandparents' house. He'd take us to this bachelor suite where we'd be told to clean up and earn our keep before dinner. He'd be stoned before the meat finished cooking. It would burn or turn rubbery, and his mood would send us to bed immediately after dinner, where we'd watch the headlights on the street reflect through the window onto the cobwebs at the corners of the room. Every 15 minutes, a siren started in the distance, some crime or accident in progress. My father once tried to apologize for the person he was, but there's nothing beyond words of an apology from a narcissist. It's an outside layer of a chocolate rabbit, sweet but mostly conceals empty space. He spoke in cruelty in its time that most poor and addicted fathers do. There's an ambulance you hear every time a baby interrupts a man's life. That siren in all contexts is the death of something. Psychiatrist nods and writes on his notepad. Do you still lie in bed a lot? Spending 4 years wanting to peel the bloody skin from my body and let it drop to the floor in a pile and in front of a mirror was how I coped with depression. Through the dark glass was bright colored noise from all angles. I remembered the sound of static in my ears, swallowed by unwet water, breathing through my hair like octopus tendrils while I sank in no direction. I leave the mental health center and walk downtown. I've been beginning to get a hold of my disassociation, viewing myself in third person. Another me questioning my choices with what little free will I have left. A truck's ramp slams into the concrete, and I'm trapped in my body 13 years ago. The noise is people. A door opens to a grim silhouette. Footsteps, a downtown drum beat echoing against concrete walls and vibrating glass. Windows revealing fake green plants. Chic. Nature is chic. We don't ever taste the dirt or chew the bark or grip the dying bird in our hands and squeeze. My feet melt crossing the street. I run out of time as the amber hand flashes. I was raped. It took 10 years to say it. In the middle of the intersection, I wail the words aloud, and time freezes. A bus stuck in the air with the driver's mouth open and a scream stifled. I remember tulips in the earth bed around a dying dogwood tree, a wide-brimmed baseball hat keeping the sun from my new eyes. I remember sneezing from the light, touching the ground without shoes and feeling each blade of grass against my feet. I remember pushing my brother's stroller onto a gravel sidewalk. The road cracked beneath our feet and the colors of the field faded. I remember tying four corners of a sheet together like cartoons and hanging out a second-story window before feeling hands pulling me back into the dark. I remember lying in the bottom bunk with my grandmother stroking my hair, singing ancient lullabies. I remember waking to the shadows of a skull floating above my bed and a floor tiled with gravestones. I remember pissing against the wall of my school. I remember pointing a toy pistol at my great-grandmother, feeling the impulse to kill, but without knowing the difference between life and death. My family's Bible was in mint condition. The mind drifts like plastic in the oceans. Why is life so mundane on play and so wonderful on rewind? My aimless wandering produced nothing but footprints. I've had rapture build from my feet to my skull, then it left. In its absence, I stared at a belt and imagined what death was. I'm taking pills like they'll cure me, even though I know they won't. Even the pills can't stop the water from rising. I say to my father, you don't deserve my memory. You don't deserve memories of me. But he doesn't hear because he isn't there.
Jesus Christ. So I have to ask, is there some kind of conspiracy going on tonight? Did everyone just get together and say, we're going to read our best shit? Like, they're like, what's the best thing you ever wrote? Well, I'm going to read that tonight. I'm going to read that tonight because Dan fucking, hey, like this is a fucking devastating piece. And there are I put a whole bunch of lines in the chat, but there are so many like tremendous, moving, evocative, like heartbreaking fucking lines in this piece. And
I wrote this.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wrote this after I watched the like biopic of Thomas Wolfe. He's like an American modernist writer, but just his style. I think I read like maybe the first 3 pages of his first novel, and then just went, I need to write something now, and then I just dropped that in like 1,000 words, just because like really good writers, they have a voice that can kind of like pull shit out of you when you like read. Like,
absolutely. This is fucking tremendous, Dan. Yeah, and that like after like it was a perfect companion to Derek's piece too. I feel like this whole night, like things have been ratcheting up in emotional intensity, and I'm fucking dead. You guys have killed me, and I think we have like 3 or 4 people to go. So buckle up. Thank you so much, Dan. That was fucking incredible.
It's the solstice soon, right? And like if you're a Northrop Frye when he talks about the seasons and how they relate to literature, but like winter is the season, or like winter solstice, things get closer and closer to like the death concept.
Yeah.
And like the dying and then renewal after that. I don't know. I like Northrop Frye.
Yeah, no, I like how that piece is like really, like you mentioned, like death and the death concept and stuff. Like it's really cosmic, but also just grounded in this really just gritty, just grim, real fucking shit. Like there's a line in there like I wanted to love the world and all of it down to the atom. That it's like that. Like damn, it almost is. It's like it evokes like Dr. Manhattan with some of the sense of like place in the universe and stuff. Then you just juxtapose it with this like just soul crushing like reality. It's powerful.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's tremendously powerful. Keko, did I say that right? I'm like, every time I say, do I say that right? But you're up next, and I think you're going to be reading some poems that were published in Expat this week, right?
Yeah, you can call me John Smith if you like. I don't care. It's it's Kekko, yeah, but it really doesn't matter. Just give me a moment to switch. Just a moment.
Oh, shoot. Keko, I thought you were between mics, and I thought you were still transitioning, but we haven't been able to hear anything that you said. I'm sorry. Um, no, it was, everyone
Okay,
just thought it was them. Everyone thought they were experiencing technical difficulties. I'm really sorry about that.
no problem.
Yeah.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you clearly
Yeah.
now.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry it took me like 5 minutes to catch.
Yeah, I just started reading it.
Sorry about that. Okay, you sound
No,
great
no.
now, though.
Absolutely no problem. I think that was my fault. I really didn't put it. Yeah, okay. Let's start all over again. Politics Online is the first poem. I hold my left hand up to the sky and you take a photo. Holding your right hand like that looks like you're doing a no-no salute. You say, I call you an idiot. You call me a Nazi. You get the likes. I get one from a guy who likes, fuck, just a moment. I get one from a guy who likes bikes and is into history and knows the president has been abducted by the Kabbalah. A Marxist surrogate has been placed instead. And the second one is a follower. The whirlpool of air, sounds and I hear them. This is just a memory of a memory, and when I say I believe in believing them. The moment is of easy times and soft muscles blessed by your truth. Your teeth are white. I can wait for your balcony speeches. That gives me time, finding the angle to be the first thing on earth to receive the sun through your smile. I stumble upon a coin from Roman times. And then it's rogue. Look at the things shining in the windows. You set out to steal, dreaming of shopping. Blonde yet a beggar, a poor boy. You are mad, a murderer, whether past or future. Glossy reflection on an opal surface. Eyes tickling with craving. You steal the sidewalk, smoke all the fag ends. Man approaches and pulls out the hair. Who points at? The sun setting into an island. What is beautiful is not stolen, but you wander away from that view. Dust up to your knees, dusk on your shoulders, you're set out to kill. And third one. Advice to the only one on the bus that strives to be an adventurer. In the glowing light, a black stain, a bug cemetery. No instinct to save the newcomers. With humane, their instinct is human. Join me in despising them. The plague of tourists flocking our local sun. Have a glass of wine. Our antique, not the pink posh French, vulgar on the tongue one. Admire the instincts that are mighty and beautiful, that do not hit the bulb. When you're about to leave me, to enter the sea, never say I'm going into the water. Water goes into wine. Show some subtlety, share my story, my empty gaze on the most beautiful ass on the beach. Just a short pause. Never go barefooted into the jungle. A wound is a deathbed contemplation. A predator is a priest. So if depression is a virtual wound, and the internet is the wild, rebel is a predator who chants, repent and die. Unicorn's forest. Unicorn's forest is soaked in fog. It's not meant for asthmatics. And panicles dewy and tickling verdure. I'm not asthmatic except for psychosomatic, though my uncle, also my great-grandfather, had asthma, and I'm a traditionalist. And panicles dewy and tickling verdure. Unicorn and I are looking at one another at a decent distance. Okay, so give me just a moment. So this last poem, it's the sound is a bit more important probably in this one than in the earlier one. So yeah, so my interpretation won't be good enough, obviously, but we'll give it a go. So the age of capital punishment. Beware the crowd, beware the bow, beware the show of cliches and cock-slimy kitsch. The crow poised on its black, the bow strung over its back. The arrow poisoned, with ads on tutorials, on self-advertising, every step of the selfie. The crow is ugly, but the bow is sadly crafted for an arrow too many. The show is fire and the forest is a pyre. How I loved you, winsome crow, before your call got filtered into a tweet. And that's it.
You know, I said earlier that that Blick's pieces really showed his range, and I think that's true of these too. Like these poems, like each one is crafted so differently than the one before. And first of all, that first one knocked me on my ass because it's so funny. Especially the last stanza of that first poem. I don't know, you really get at like the absurdity of like fighting about politics on the internet, right?
Yeah.
But then you move on to these poems that are like really rich and romantic and emotional, and then like and one thing that I really enjoy about your work, and this goes not only for these poems but for the ones that we've published as well, is the way that you like combine the like contemporary and the traditional. Like you'll build up and you'll give the sense that this is almost like a fantasy poem or a romantic poem, and then suddenly you're talking about Twitter, right? Like in the last poem, and like those swerves get me every fucking time, and this is good shit. This is good shit. Is this your first publication on Expat?
No, actually it's my third.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
to see you on Expat as well. And I don't know, this is a great fucking collection of poems.
Thanks. And I'm really glad you enjoyed it, and your remarks about the mixture about traditional and contemporary. Thanks.
No, it kicks ass. It kicks ass. And it's something that Rudy and I always discuss when you submit a batch to us. Like, we're always blown away by the like juxtaposition there. So thank you so much for sharing. Next up is Ollie, who hopefully is still awake and still with us at this hour. I know it's very late over there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah,
it's been a while, but yeah, I finally managed to stay up. So yeah, I mean, this, yeah, it's in the chat. This is, purely work in progress. It's just sort of vignettes of like, I guess, a new character, a new voice that I'm trying to form something up with. But I figured I'd share it, get some opinions, get some feedback. And yeah, just give it a read. Okay. The boy who took me to the year 11 prom messaged me on Facebook last night. He said that he hardly recognized me in my new profile picture, lol. My Facebook profile picture was last updated on the 29th of November, 2019. The message was seen at 23:38. Roger Ebert wrote in his review of Baz Luhrmann's Moulin Rouge 2001 concerning the parts of Satine, Nicole Kidman, Christian, Ewan McGregor, Toulouse-Lautrec, John Leguizamo, and the Duke of Worcester, Richard Roxburgh, but each of these characters is seen in terms of their own fantasies about themselves. Ebert's description of these fantasies sums up the self-image of most of the people in my life at this moment in time. They are as follows: flamboyant and romantic, lonely and lovelorn, so easily duped because being duped is the essence of his role in life, good-hearted, only seems to be a bad girl. Most men really want me to be their Satine. I'll let you guess which one of those descriptions she falls under. But that self-image is not my truth. There's no love at the end of that picture. This Ebert quote pings up in my head every time I apply one filter too many to a selfie. I always discard the thought. One too many is the new one too few. If a guy has to pick you up off the dance floor, his monkey brain is only going to register that under physical contact, good. His monkey dick will then stiffen, and he's only going to be that much easier to rob when you get back to his. So many guys leave these ridiculous chunky Swiss watches out on their bedside tables. They never even wear them. They're just discarded, forgotten about, expensive eye candy. You're just helping them clear some stuff out, making room for the important things in life. You can't do that if you've only had one too few. Your self-image won't stand up to scrutiny. And no, you can't just pretend. The monkey brain's special skill is knowing when a banana isn't ripe yet. My first guy who got labeled boyfriend, he always walked me home after nights out in Brixton, Lambeth, Hoxton, whatever. We'd all take the train back at least as far as Selhurst. But us two were the only ones who went all the way to Purley, where he'd wrap his arm over my collarbone and pull me in until my shoulder dug into his chest. I went out with him for 2 months just to give him what he wanted. And after that, I didn't have to feel bad about getting off at South Croydon instead. I've got no tickets from those days stashed anywhere because none of us ever paid the fare. On the rare occasions that they were actually closed that late, we flashed our tits and our teeth at the guys on the barriers, and the boys just strolled on through behind us. There's no physical evidence of those times ever actually occurring. I used to never know why men who hated women so much wanted to spend so much time and money on them. It was after this Hugo Boss Audi Submariner tried to dump me by saying that there was this other woman, some poor mid-30s drone from Zurich who worked in banking at Credit Suisse. Checking her out on LinkedIn years later, I found out she was the receptionist. Hugo gave me this yellow gold bow tie necklace to remember him by. The thing went up for £70 on eBay but Hugo must have paid at least 4 times that and wrapped it around my neck that night as if he'd paid 8 before turning on his heels down the embankment, M83 Midnight City playing, end of part 1. So far, so normal. But it was that very same night that this fucking black A8 with blue tinted headlights swings back around with the statue of Achilles as a backdrop, and out pops Hugo, dashing over to me and falling to his knees, begging in the post-shower puddles to please take him back. I blow his mind every time I see him, and we both regret it for the rest of our lives if we didn't give things another chance at least. My finger led Hugo's little wet eyes up my tights, over my hip and up the black velvet, up to my cleavage, up and over my yellow gold neckline sparkling under the street lights, all the way up to my chin, to my cheek, and under my eye, bursting with red and purple splotches, swollen up to the size of a mediocre male ego. That wasn't my response to him. That was my statement. Later, we watched Hugo's sodden blue shirt cling to his body as they winched it up onto the Serpentine Bridge, his arms hanging at his sides, his hands rigid. All I saw was at least 3 decades worth of teenage girls safe from just one more of him forever. A Rolex Submariner is waterproof to a depth of 1,000 feet. The riverbed of the Serpentine sits only 17 deep. Same as my age when I figured out that men who give women gold necklaces and black eyes don't hate women half as much as they hate themselves.
This kicks ass. This is so good. You've created like such a vivid and immediately recognizable character here, right? And one of the great ways like that authors handle like unreliable narrators or like crafting an immediately recognizable narrator is how like what details the narrator chooses to fixate on. And you really nailed that here with like all of the details about like fashion and about like, you know, the accoutrement of wealth, like the watches, that like every brand that's mentioned in this piece is a luxury brand, right? So you're immediately in the headspace of this narrator and you immediately think that you understand what she's up to. But what the piece does, I think, in a very crafty way, is it gives her depth as you go along, right? And she like turns from being this like sort of obvious gold digger character in the beginning to someone who has real pathos by the end. And you do that in just 2 fucking pages, which is remarkable. It's good shit. It's good shit, Ollie.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was reading Jarrett Kobeck's I Hate the Internet, and like there was like some line in it saying like writing in the novel needs to comprehend social media and like, you know, the new world, and it, like, so I feel like I'm trying to make my writing adhere to that, I guess, like sort of capture this like the snippets of like social media-ness in it. So yeah, I'm glad.
Captures that. Yeah. Also, I'm not sure if Unity is still here, but I appreciate the Roger Ebert reference in here. Like, I think your piece is like the 3rd or 4th piece read here that incorporates one of Ebert's reviews into it. And as someone who like grew up reading Roger Ebert's movie reviews, whenever that happens in one of these pieces, it has my attention. But no, that was fantastic, Ollie. Thank you so much for sharing it. Up next is Josh. Are you still with us, Josh? Are you still awake, still lucid, ready to go?
Yeah, I've got my lime sapsucker, which is a like kind of maple tree water, organic sparkling tree water. Kobeck's I Hate the Internet's great. I like everything I've read by him so far. But yeah, this was written this evening for this evening, and it will probably only exist in this recording. So don't take it too seriously. It's a work of fiction. It's called Vyvanse and LaCroix, a memoir. Josh Sherman is sitting at his iMac, sipping a can of hibiscus LaCroix and waiting for the Vyvanse to take effect. Good thing he managed to say all the right things to Dr. C last month to get the stimulant prescribed. Yes, he does start new projects without finishing what he started. No, he doesn't have trouble sleeping. He dodged a bipolar disorder diagnosis there. He also knew better than to deny using cocaine or Adderall ever because, well, who was he kidding? He just played it off as the usual college stuff, like Obama. While he's been gloating for weeks about this performance, having access to the meds today is of special importance. He's got a big project to start. The work isn't related to the government contract job he's held for the past 5 years, although as far as human resources is concerned, he's on the clock. It has to do with an email that his publisher, Graham Riddlebarger, sent him recently. Okay, technically, Riddlebarger is his potential publisher. 8 months ago, Riddlebarger expressed interest in a collection of poems and stories that Josh had been trying to get published for years, but the project hasn't firmed up yet. A series of drug and alcohol binges have compromised Josh's ability to wrap up the book, and this is partly what makes the email so distressing. You see, Josh suspects that Riddlebarger only reached out to him about publishing his manuscript because of his social media presence at the time. Riddlebarger's publishing house, Snob Pile Press, was new, and Josh's 1,600 Twitter followers and blue check, since revoked, must have seemed like a good place to start. But in the 8 months since then, Riddlebarger's little press has soared to impressive, albeit indie heights. He's obtained coveted blurbs from alt-lit celebrities such as Scott McClanahan, and his Twitter following, though still a fraction of Josh's, is growing. Riddlebarger, of course, is aware of these dynamics. His email makes that much clear. In the correspondence, which Josh can't bear to read once more, having refreshed his email hundreds of times since the night before, Riddlebarger notes that a few things have changed since their first casual agreement nearly a year ago. The publisher's manifesto, for one. The upcoming release schedule, of which Josh wasn't a part anyways, has also been tweaked. And a new writer named Claudia Bundall is now on the roster, much to Josh's annoyance. She'd unfollowed him on Twitter a while back. But most importantly, Riddlebarger says that he now requires a certain visibility from the writers he publishes. Someone like McClanahan, of course, is mythic in stature. He's been reviewed in the New York Times. There's no need for him to send out unhinged tweets at 3 a.m. in a desperate bid for attention. Apparently, however, Josh is given no such grace. Either he increases his following and online impressions, the email goes on to say, or he finds another publisher. Normally, Josh would relish this challenge. He's managed to build a following through what at first may seem like the impulsive, self-obsessed tantrums of a half-formed man in the grips of narcissistic rage. A closer look, however, reveals a deeper strategy at play. Note, for example, that he never really stands to lose anything with the targets he selects. They're either on the fringes of the literary scene he is a part of, such as OK Mommy, an online lit mag he once publicly berated for unfollowing him, or they are divisive enough characters that there are followers to be gained, even if a few are lost. The latter was the case with the last two writers whom Josh launched campaigns against, Sam Fuchsia and Big Bruiser Dope Man. One of his comments even received a like from Scott McClanahan's wife, which felt better than any acceptance letter Josh has received from a publication. But if anything, these recent successes are now part of the reason that Josh is paralyzed at his iMac, opening another LaCroix. He's always careful not to court controversy too often. People tend to tune out and unfollow when things get repetitive. Now his hand is forced. His plans to stay offline until the new year shattered. He takes in the view from his bedroom, a brick wall 3 feet away on the other side of the alley, separating his apartment from its neighbor. Not every window is an opportunity, he thinks. Josh decides to turn to his only source of comfort in times of crisis, the works of French novelist Michel Houellebecq. He kneels before the bookcase that he has dedicated to problematic male authors. Running his fingers along the spines of the 8 volumes representing Houellebecq's entire output in English translation, he wonders, what would Houellebecq do? The answer arrives instantly. Islamophobia. Of course. How hadn't he thought of it before? There was a lot going for the plan, Josh had to admit. Not only had it worked for Houellebecq, did you see the international headlines? But it could also help Josh reach an as yet untapped faction online, Zionists. And, perhaps best of all, it would be a delicious betrayal of sorts. You see, Ruzan, one of the founders of Misery Cult, the literary journal that had been unwavering in its loyalty to Josh, is known to be of Islamic origins. Of course, there is a rumor that Ruzan once defecated on a mosque in his youth, but it remains just that, a rumor. Maybe there is something to this plan, Josh thinks, already beginning to rapidly draft tweets. He composes them in Microsoft Word, so there's no risk of a premature tweet. The first one says, redacted. Another reads, redacted. Unsatisfied, he knows he has to go all out, to channel the darkest sides of humanity, to say it like he means it. So he writes, redacted. Somehow, it's just not working. Josh thinks he knows why. True, he might lose his job, and you could argue that the tweet is verging on a hate crime, although Canadian law seems so inconsistent on this front. Really, the thing that bothers Josh the most is the fact that in all his past efforts, there is at least a shred of authenticity to what he'd said. He really does, for example, think that Sam Fuchsia is fucking annoying. But a racist? How could Josh be a racist? His favorite porn star is Mia Khalifa. Also, he's Jewish and Italian, a double minority. Josh senses the denouement arriving. He has displayed impressive personal growth and considerable restraint, but there is still one more thing to resolve. What's he going to do in response to Riddle Barger's email if he can't send those redacted tweets? After crushing another LaCroix and stewing in amphetamine a while longer, the answer becomes obvious. He'll publish this story. Then he'll tag every single person who is mentioned in it. That's it.
Wait, Josh, I just want to clap. I love you. I love you, Josh. Josh Sherman forever.
Fuck yeah.
Josh, you. I can't even fucking say anything, Josh, God damn it, Rudy, say something about it. Rudy, say something.
Something. Yeah, that wow, that rocked really hard, and I just want to say, boy, that guy defecated on a mouse. That sure paints some of his other work, like that game about the woman with the burqa, and some in a really different light, man. Like,
yeah, it was kind of inspired by, I mean, a few things. I was reading Lunar Park recently, but and also obviously some recent stuff happened. And I actually was sleeping one night and started writing this in my head earlier this week and couldn't sleep and just wrote an outline that night. And then was like, tonight was like, I'll just try and make something. But it was also inspired by Gigi's little kind of stuff he read earlier about Talin as well.
Josh, that was so fucking funny.
amazing. The Mia Khalifa line, like, man, that got me.
Josh, were you here last year in one of the early ones when Jake read his open mic piece?
Oh, I love that piece. That's like one of my all-time.
I'm still so mad that was like the one day that I didn't come. Like,
it's on Misery Tourism, isn't it?
I watched it, but it's not the same.
You guys published it, right?
Yeah, we did. We published it. The video's still up and the story is up on the website too. Josh, I mentioned that because this is like that experience part 2, right? I love it when like someone really puts on a fucking performance. It's very it's clearly very personal. I'm sorry. You can see I'm losing my shit here, but Josh, let me be clear here. You should never publish this story, but if you did publish this story, you should never publish it in any publication that is not Misery Tourism. That's where I stand on this.
I was fine with the idea. Yeah, I can't do it right now, but I think it, I actually think it probably now is the time, but I don't know. I figure there's never any harm. I figure it kind of works as a piece, and I figure it never hurts to finish a thing, and then maybe I can either apply things to future things, or I don't know, maybe I will just say fuck it and throw it out there. It actually doesn't say anything like bad. It's just like kind of,
No, it perfectly captures the like hilarious pettiness of the indie lit space.
Yeah, that's what it's kind of. Yeah, that was meant to do. Well, thanks for hearing it out.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much, Josh. So we just have one more for tonight. Gabriel. Gabriel is Gabe's last up with, I think you have a few poems.
Yeah, just got some couple quick ones, and I have to. This first one I'm going to read. I have to thank you, Will, because the first couple lines I just flagrantly tweeted because it's how my day was actually going, and you said that's a poem, and I said I deleted it and basically said not yet. So this is what happened. Shelter to Cinder. I tore apart the tweaker's shack, now firewood for the winter. My little way of getting back at them when they burnt their shelter to cinder. Their field mice escaped to bunk with me, assuming they were evading flame, yet all I'm doing here, waiting for the half-sane human being to earn my heating, a reason to learn the discipline of a controlled burn. And the next one's called Savior Invasive. Look at me. I've achieved absolute empathy, now floating from my body, so my white skin might deliver you from your hunger. I've gifted you your own day, since your days are so numbered. Your face displayed, backlit, sun rays, a head on stake, overexposure. Above you now, looking down on those lesser than me, whose weaknesses I have supplied, amplified, then defined you by. Would your own McDonald's brand pacify you? My head in the clouds, my bullhorn loud, to drown out the calm of living by example. The last one's called Verdict. Writing is nothing if it isn't just letting the bad go free.
Those fucking rock, Gabe. I remember when you made that tweet, and like just that image, right, of like taking the tweaker's shack that had burned down and turning it into firewood. There's like something so poetic about that act, right? Like the transformative nature of that act. And what you've done here, like the way that you've like embellished upon it and the way that you've like meticulously like dragged out the meaning there is really fucking good. I love the last 3 lines, or the last 4 lines here, really. The to learn the discipline of a controlled burn. I mean, that is so perfect, and it so perfectly mirrors how the piece opens. It's just it's a remarkable poem.
No, thank you again.
And your performance on the second one was that was so good.
I was trying to like think of like what an empath would, someone who called themselves an empath would sound like. So that's there's a lot of those. There's a definite empath demographic out here in the desert. So.
You put like a very hard lean into like the poet voice or whatever.
Yeah. I fell into that too.
It works for that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that one definitely got me too. That one worked hard.
Cool. Thanks, you guys.
It was fantastic, Gabe. And I think those were like the perfect end to what has been like every once in a while we have one of these things. Like, listen, I love every one of these fucking things, right? Or I wouldn't do this every week. But every once in a while there's one that's just fucking magical where everyone brings their A game and everyone is firing on all cylinders. And it's just one amazing reading after another. And tonight was one of those nights. So
yeah, I felt that too.
So thank you to everyone who read, and I can't believe that. Like, anyway, it was fucking remarkable. Thank you to everyone who read tonight. Thank you to everyone who comes to these things with regularity. And I think we need to leave it there. It's getting pretty late. I am going to leave the Zoom call up for a little bit after this, but we're going to end the reading portion of the night there. Once again, thank you to everyone. If you're watching this on YouTube, We do this every single fucking week. Friday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Anyone is welcome to come. Anyone is welcome to read during the open mic if we have one. If not, anyone who shoots a DM to the @MiseryTourism Twitter account can share their work. And certainly anyone is welcome to come and lurk as long as you're not a fucking troll. Anyway, that's it. We're done. Thank you again, everyone. This has been an awesome night. And I almost ended it instead of stopping the recording. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.